You know, in this digital world we're all living in, we've got this massive challenge on our hands. How do we use data for all the amazing things it can do, like fighting crime or powering incredible new AI, while still protecting our basic right to privacy? The rules can feel super complex, the technology is often confusing, but figuring this out, it's genuinely one of the most important things we've got to do right now.
All right, so here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll get to the heart of the matter, the core conflict between privacy and security. Then we'll look at society's first big attempt at a solution, this global rulebook of laws. After that, we'll see how AI just crashed the party and changed everything, creating this huge data sharing dilemma. And then, the exciting part, we'll explore some groundbreaking tech that could solve it all and talk about what it means to build a future we can actually trust.
Okay, so before we get into the weeds on any of this, we have got to get one thing straight. To really get a handle on the challenges of data protection, we first have to be crystal clear on two terms that people mix up all the time. Seriously, getting this right is the key to understanding everything else that follows. Think about a bank. Data security? That's the giant steel vault door, the laser grids, the security guards. It's all the stuff that stops the bad guys from breaking in. But data privacy, that's about the rules for what happens inside the vault. It decides who's allowed to open your specific safe deposit box, why they can open it, and what they can do with what's inside. You absolutely need security to even have a shot at privacy, but they are not the same thing. So, as our data became more and more valuable, countries all over the world did what governments do best. They started making rules. This kicked off a huge wave of regulations, creating what was basically the first version of a global rulebook for data. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Just look at that row for consent. In Europe, with GDPR, you have to explicitly opt in. You have to say, yes, please. But in California, the focus is more on your right to opt out, to say, hey, stop selling my data. Brazil is kind of closer to the EU model. These little differences seem small, but for any company that works around the world, it creates this incredibly complicated patchwork of rules to follow. And the stakes? They are enormous. We're not talking about a small slap on the wrist. Under GDPR, the biggest penalty can be up to 4% of a company's total global revenue for the entire previous year. For the biggest tech giants, that number can literally be billions of dollars. That's a fine designed to get the attention of every single person in the boardroom.
So, just as the world was finally starting to get a handle on all these new data laws, boom, a new force shows up and just flips the whole table over: artificial intelligence. AI is this amazing tool for analyzing data, for sure, but it also introduced a brand new and way more complex threat to both our privacy and our security.
And in response, the EU once again stepped up with its AI Act. This is the world's first major law for artificial intelligence. And what's smart about it is that it doesn't treat all AI the same. Instead, it creates this risk-based pyramid you see here. Right at the very top, you have AI systems that are considered an unacceptable risk to our rights, and they're just flat out banned. Then, as you work your way down the pyramid, the rules get less and less strict. So what does unacceptable risk actually mean? Well, we're talking about some pretty dystopian stuff. Things like government-run social scoring systems that rank citizens. Or AI that manipulates kids, like a toy that tells a child to do something dangerous. Even things like scraping every face off the public internet to build giant databases without anyone's permission. The EU basically drew a very hard line in the sand and said, nope, we're not doing that here. Okay, so we have data laws, we have AI laws. Problem solved, right? Well, not quite. This actually leads us to a huge paradox at the center of all this. The very rules that we created to protect us can also get in the way of the collaboration we desperately need to fight things like sophisticated global crime. Think about it. Criminals and fraudsters, they love silos. They thrive in the dark. They exploit the fact that one bank has no idea what another bank sees. They just hop from one to the next across borders, taking advantage of the fact that the good guys can't connect the dots. Our best defense is sharing information. When we're united, we can see the whole picture. But when we're divided, we're just looking at tiny, useless pieces of the puzzle. And this slide just nails the core problem. To stop a massive money laundering scheme, banks need to share clues with each other. But those privacy laws we talked about, or rules that say data can't leave a country, they often make that impossible. It creates this constant seesaw. If you tip the scale one way for more sharing and security, you might hurt privacy. But if you tip it the other way to lock down data for privacy, you open up huge holes for criminals to exploit. For years, we've been stuck making this trade-off. But what if we didn't have to choose? What if that whole trade-off was a false choice?
What if we could just get off the seesaw completely? Well, a whole new family of technologies is coming into its own, and it promises to do exactly that, to let us get all the valuable insights from data without ever having to give up our privacy.
They're called privacy-enhancing technologies, or PETs for short. And this isn't just one thing. It's a whole collection of really advanced tools. But they all share one incredible goal: to completely break that old seesaw paradigm. PETs let us analyze and learn from data while that data stays totally protected, encrypted, and private. Okay, let's look at one of the most powerful PETs, just to see how this works. It's called homomorphic encryption. And honestly, this is where it starts to feel a little bit like magic. It's a way to do math on data while it's still completely scrambled and encrypted. The best analogy is a locked box. Imagine your sensitive data is inside a locked box that you can't open. With this tech, you can still perform calculations on what's inside from the outside and get an accurate result without ever unlocking the box and exposing the raw data. It's incredible.
And this is not just a theory and a research lab, this is already happening. Take a look at this real-world project from MasterCard. They got banks together from 4 different countries. Using homomorphic encryption, a bank in the US could check the network to see if a transaction looked suspicious. Other banks in, say, the UK or Singapore could add their encrypted data to the calculation, and the system could provide an answer, all without a single piece of raw customer data ever being shared or leaving its home country. This is an absolute game changer.
And homomorphic encryption is just one of the really cool tools in the PETs toolbox. There are other amazing approaches too. On the left, you've got federated learning. With this, instead of moving all the sensitive data to one central AI model, you send the model out to the data. It learns locally, say at different hospitals, without any of that private patient data ever getting pooled together. And on the right, you have synthetic data. This is where you create a totally artificial data set that's a statistical mirror image of the real thing. You can train AI and run analyses on it without ever touching a single person's actual information.
So let's pull all these different threads together. We've got the world of laws and regulations trying to set the rules of the road. And then we have this world of incredible breakthrough technology that's creating entirely new ways of doing things. What does all this mean for the path forward? The big takeaway, the most important thing to remember from all of this, is that the future isn't a choice between having more laws or having better tech. The real answer is putting them together. We need smart regulations that tell us what we need to achieve, the privacy goals. And then we need to embrace innovative technologies like PETs that give us the tools for how to achieve those goals without giving up security or the ability to innovate.
And that leaves us with one last really big question. We now have the technology that can finally solve the data dilemma to get us off that seesaw for good. But tech doesn't just adopt itself. So, who should be leading this charge? Do we need regulators to force the issue? Should we just wait for private companies to build the business case? Or does this new era require something totally new? A deep partnership between governments and innovators to build a data ecosystem that all of us can finally, truly trust?